Hello and welcome. I am here with Nazly Nejadamin, and we are going to be talking about balance. So, Nazly is the CEO of Higher Vibrations Healings out of Edmonton, Alberta, and Nazly is a healer. And we met actually through Golden Heart Rising. Nazly found my tarot channel back in the day. I want to say back in the day, it wasn't actually that long ago, but and I you always came up and got to know your name. And then Nazly booked in for a reading and then we just couldn't stop talking. So we have all these crossovers and I love what she's doing. And we come from a very similar place. So you're probably going to hear a few of these sessions in the future because we have a lot to talk about. But I'm so glad that you're here and that we can talk about balance.
Thank you so much for having me. It is really exciting to be sitting across from you. In a sense, I guess we're Zoom, but we're face to face here. And as you mentioned, I did find your readings and they were always spot on. So it's so cool to be here with you today. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm glad that you're here and we're going to have some fun with this topic because like I said, I feel that you and I come from very similar paths and perspectives, perspectives on life and healing and the journey of self-discovery and really working towards, well, using what we've our own learning that we've gone through to help other people. That's really this transfer of knowledge and wisdom and skills and passion to help other people, and that's the point also of this podcast. This YouTube is going to be going podcast and YouTube as well. So it's all about, how can we share what we've learned, what we've gone through, what we've experienced to help others at the end of the day. And so let's start with what you're doing. So let's talk about your higher vibrations healings clinic or your practice and what you're practicing, because you told me a few things that were really interesting. So let's start about how you got into it. And then we're going to go into balance, but I just wanted to give a quick overview of where you're coming from, who you are, what you're specializing in, and all the good stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I, like you mentioned, got into all of these practices because of my own healing journey, um, and got introduced to many tools along my path to help me with what I was dealing with in my life. And I come from an immigrant background, as we've discussed before, and faced lots of challenges growing up, and have even faced addictions, just lots of challenges of my own, realizing I had PTSD, and all these different acronyms that we have these days: ADD,
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, all of the lovely ways we can label and what we've faced, really. And dealing with all my own things, I've come along to different practices like Qigong. I had a wonderful Qigong master who guided me in that. I learned a lot about balance there. That's kind of where my journey started. And then I went into kind of energy healing, learning about the chakra system, how everything is related. And as I was kind of coming along in my journey, I was watching Gaia TV, actually, which is kind of like the spiritual Netflix, if nobody knows about it. And on there, I kept hearing about this BioWell device, and I was very curious, and I wanted to try it for myself because I was like, okay, I need to know where where my imbalances are. I need to know where my chakras are at, if I've got any blockages, and this sounds like it's right up my alley. And there was a few practitioners in Vancouver, but I was like just getting to know it and being in the energy healing arts kind of thing. I was like, I'm going to give this a try. And just bought it. I bought my own machine, and it was a deep dive into the unknown, because it's really uh, the training is kind of it's you can't really give training as to where people's energy can be, because the chakras for anybody could be anywhere at any given time, and it could mean something different. So you do kind of have to use that knowledge of chakras and meridians and acupuncture systems. Qigong, that background helped a lot as well, to understand how to use this machine and this device and how to read it. And So I started just scanning myself, learning on myself, seeing where I did have imbalances and blockages. It was just a really cool way to learn about where I was at, and just getting further knowledge into it by taking the different levels, the courses that they provide, and learning more about it as I was scanning myself. And I decided to, during COVID, open my own practice and start using it with clients. And I mean, that's where it really took off for me, because I got to experiment. I got to see, after scanning hundreds of people, you really get to see similarities. And that's where it was really cool with the machine. Was now I was like, oh, wow, okay, I can interpret, I can see, I can really research into people. And like one experiment, for example, I think I was mentioning it to you last time, was working with clients who didn't necessarily want to talk. They didn't really want to open up. So I'd scan them and I'd say, okay, your energy's at, say, like 30%. Let's, I want you to, for 5 minutes, just talk about something that you love, or many things that you love. And just keep going for 5 minutes. Try not to go anywhere negative with it. Like, don't think about your mom and then, oh, this morning we had a fight, but like really try to keep it positive. And sometimes we wouldn't even get to 5 minutes because they're like, okay, I'm done. I'm at 4 minutes and I've talked about everything that I love. And so we just scanned them again. And the results were incredible, because I could see anywhere between 30 to 60% difference in the balance of energy.
It's amazing.
So it was really cool. And,
Mhm.
I don't know if you know about this experiment that they did with children in the schools. I think it was an IKEA commercial. And they told a group of kids to say positive things to one plant and negative things to the other. And the
Mm,
one they said positive things to thrived. And the one they said negative things to deteriorated.
mm,
And it was really kind of showing people that in their own bodies, that
mhm. Yeah,
look at
yeah,
just 4 minutes or five
yeah,
minutes of thinking positively can change
yeah.
your entire energy.
It's like the rice experiment as well. It's the same sort of thing. And I saw that rice experiment at my friend's house. She did it with her grandchild, and I saw it firsthand. One rice was moldy and gross, and then the other one was healthy, like night and day difference. So yeah, the power
Exactly.
of words and thought is powerful. It can really damage or it can heal. So yeah.
100%. Another
Hmm.
experiment, I think, was the water experiment. I don't know if you're familiar with that one,
Hmm. Hmm.
where they put just words on containers, love, fear, and I hate you, or playing metal music, for example, on one. The other had like a Buddhist meditation or a prayer done on it. And then, seeing the form that it takes after it crystallizes. It's
Hmm.
just so cool to see the effects of words on our being.
Yeah, yeah. And it's one thing seeing it and knowing it, but then the other is to put it in practice.
Exactly. That's the hard part. I
And
think that's
remember
why we're
that
here.
rice, remember that jar of rice or water. Remember that's what's happening in your body. But it's
Yes.
when we're in it, it's one thing talking about it and knowing it, but the other it's actually really, really practicing the change. And you we it's these practices of their different modalities but arriving at the same place, really getting people
Yes.
conscious and aware of their mind and their emotions, and really trying to go deeper within self to understand what is happening. You've approached it slightly different than I have. We've talked about this before, like what we tend to gravitate towards as practitioners, and also just like the way that we see and interpret and feel the change within ourselves and the practice that we tend to gravitate towards. But at the
Yes.
end of the day, it really is, it sort of all have like the same, well, definitely the same goal, but similar experiences, that come
Exactly.
through it. So it's quite interesting that way.
Exactly. Well, and there's so many different types of people, right?
Hmm.
Something's going to resonate with one person and it's not going to with another. And so it's just
Yeah.
a matter of like, sound therapy is another part of what I do. And some people love music, that's their other language.
Mm.
And some people are just, it's not their thing, right? They gravitate more towards, like floating, for example,
Mm,
water therapy,
I
right?
love
Just all of
floating.
these. Yes, it's just, I think the importance is that balance of yin and yang, right?
Mhm,
Again, we're coming back to that balance and what makes you feel in your yin, right?
mhm,
Where are you receiving in your life? Where are you at peace? Where are you in rest and digest? And where are you in go, go, go mode, right? Or is it your career? Is it your children? Like, where in your life can you find this balance between doing and then receiving or resting?
mhm. Yeah, well, that's the segue. So let's talk
Yes.
about it. Let's just dive into the theme of balance and why it's so important. So I just had to adjust my laptop here. So sorry about the change in my video area there, but we're going to talk about balance. So let's dive into this discussion here and the theme of balance and why it's so important. So well, I got Libra in my chart. I got a lot of that balance. The need for balance is my go-to. In astrology, Libra, in numerology, the number 8. So if you have either one of those, you're naturally going to want to crave balance. And if you're not feeling balanced, then you're going to feel really out of place. It's going to be really hard for you to feel comfortable.
Yes.
But we're going to look at the different aspects of balance and what it means and how you can work towards integrating it more into your life and into yourself. And when we are out of balance in any way, and this goes into the shadow, when we are out of balance, if we're overcompensating for something, if we're living strongly in one dynamic of ourselves, or maybe our logic versus our heart, or vice versa, like the imbalances between the aspects within ourselves. If we overthink and we don't use our intuition, if we, work really hard and we don't take breaks, there's going to be a repercussion for that imbalance. And so we're going to talk about several different aspects that are important to be aware of, and how you, the listeners, the watchers, viewers, can work towards incorporating more balance, and even just the repercussions that could happen because of the lack of balance. And really, a lot of it comes down to our health when we have the imbalances that we really have to watch and maintain. But it also can affect many other areas. But I find for certain, well, for me, it will affect my mind first. That's, like I have a lot of air in my chart. So my
Yes.
mind usually is the number one that starts like really wreaking havoc on my day to day. But then my body kicks in after that, or the emotions, right? It's all connected.
Yes.
So let's start with what do you want to talk about first? Light and dark, the
Yes.
aspect of, yeah,
That's
the,
perfect because I mean it's the symbol of the yin and the yang, right? The
mhm,
the dark and the light and the need for both. And to not see them as good or bad, but again in balance with one another, because we need the darkness. We need the darkness, for example, the melatonin to get triggered in our brains, right? And wanting to sleep. We need the light, right? We need the light to grow our food. We need the light to get vitamin D, right? So we need both these things in order to live in balance, both physically and emotionally. And I think that, the mind, body, and soul being in balance with one another in this is also very important.
mhm. Well, it's also when I think, and you raised some really great points. So Nazly is a Taurus, and I don't really talk about zodiacs often. If it
Mm.
comes up in conversation, it's fun, but it really does play into the element of what we tend to gravitate towards. So it's interesting that you gravitated towards the body and earth first.
That's
I
right.
gravitate towards the mind and the shadow part of the spiritual practice, and that was really great that you mentioned that, because I'm used to, I think, thinking about it or working with it in the context of the spiritual practice of the positivity and the light versus the shadow side. And I say this many times. I've talked about it so many times about how imbalanced, even in the spiritual practice, the spiritual community, the practice can be, if we're wanting to maintain a positive vibration. And that's where this whole, I guess, the goal of spiritual practice is to reach a higher state of being, a higher level consciousness, higher positive, greater positivity, all the good
Yes.
stuff. And we strive so much to get there that we ignore the dark, or we feel bad about getting mad, or we put so much pressure or guilt on ourselves that, oh, I'm actually, like really hating that person, and
Yes.
oh, like I don't feel good about this. And how do I like
Hmm.
feel better about myself or get myself in a better state of being? But you can't ignore that. You have to understand where that's coming from and go into the dark and embrace it, and not think that it's bad and that you're not going to achieve a higher level of consciousness or enlightenment. If you avoid it and if you suppress it, then you're not going to reach that higher state of consciousness or enlightenment. You may think that that's the way of being all good and peaceful and happy, and always projecting into that vibration or state of being, but you're just completely avoiding a very important part of ourselves. And it does help us maintain balance when we do
Yes.
understand what that is. And that's the point of it.
Yes.
It's not, with shadow work especially, or just the awareness aspect, it's not about reaching that goal of being in that super high vibrational frequency all the time and being good and everything is wonderful and peace and love. Is balance. It is
Yes.
finding balance and honoring both sides equally, and understanding that, and not being hard on ourselves when we hit those difficult moments, or when we go into the dark, and
Yes.
relaxing. Okay, I'm having a really shitty day and I hate my life right now, and I'm okay with it.
That's right.
I
That's
had that the other
exactly
day.
it.
I had the other day. So I feel you and I are really close at where we are with our practice. Like we just
Yes.
had a little bit of a chat before entering this conversation, but also just in our other conversations too. I just feel like what we've gone through and where we are now. And you said before that, yeah, there's not much I can't handle, because you
Yes.
go through these and then you come to accept it. You're like, yeah, no, I get it. I've worked through it. I know I can overcome challenges. I know I can
Yes.
deal with the hard stuff. I know I can get through this. I know I have the power within me to be all I want to be, and
100%.
you reach that place within yourself. But then the other day I had, and I've been there as well myself. But the other day I had an off day, just all this stuff
Yes.
hit me, like old stories and stuff, and it
Hmm.
happens. And
Yes.
immediately I was like, oh no, I'm falling in this. And it was so good before. I want it back. I want all the good stuff back. But then, I sent a message to my friend and I said, you know what? I'm not going to do anything today. I'm just going to take the day off and I'm going to do nothing, and I'm going to be okay with it. And
Hmm.
just even saying it and knowing it and just being in that state is hard. It's hard because you're also breaking patterns right there in that
Yes.
in that state. You're also facing patterns and saying, no, I'm not going to fall into my old self. I'm just going to be, and at the end of the day you're going to get out of it and things are going to change, right? So
That's right.
yeah.
Exactly. And I think the misconception of living in the positive all the time too is that when one negative thing does happen, you lose all control and you let it
Yeah.
spiral.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that one little thing, then you focus on it. For example, like, somebody cuts you off in traffic and you're like, oh, how
Hmm.
dare they? And you're replaying that all day, all the way up until lunchtime.
Hmm.
Right. And then of course, because you've lived in that for a couple of hours, another negative thing comes. And then you get trapped in the shadow, right? Because I
Hmm.
think we touched on this the last time, and it happens to the best of us. But also, I don't think it's another misconception is you cannot avoid this challenge. This is what life is. We are here to create and evolve. And we are
Yeah.
here as you know, ultimately as humans to evolve. And in order to do that, we have to face those challenges. And being a parent, I see the reverse of what I've created in that, of course, I've faced all these challenges. I'm like, I'm going to make the perfect life for my child. I'm going to make sure she doesn't face any adversity. And you know what? I see that it backfires because with the
Hmm.
smallest challenge, she's having a complete meltdown,
Hmm.
right? Whereas you would think that if I had allowed her to maybe face some smaller challenges along the way, she wouldn't see something that's, what maybe another child wouldn't find as challenging,
Right.
right? So big. And again, like we need to we grow in adversity. So not getting stuck in the negative or positive is what's important. So for me,
Yeah.
for example, I've been in several accidents that were at the time very unfortunate. They really there was pain involved, there was, you know, lots of suffering, but at the end of the day, I was unwilling to make a change in my life, and the, you know, the universe is like, you know what, you're not making the change, I'm going to do it for you. And I kept repeating these accidents until I was like, okay, something's not right, I need to make a change. And you know, those negative accidents were probably the best things that ever happened to me,
Right.
because it set me on, it catapulted me into my healing journey. It really
Mhm.
did. All that spiritual knowledge I had gained, it was in those moments that I was able to actually use it.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly. Um, yeah. Okay. Well, we have the light, the dark, we have the masculine, feminine. Do you want to talk about the masculine, feminine qualities, the imbalances with that, and what the first of all, what the imbalance of the two. So we all have masculine and feminine principles, qualities within ourselves. And
Agree.
it's really, really important to know these both for men and women,
Yes.
because we can get very locked into what we perceive being a man is like and what we perceive being a woman is like. Um, and again, don't want to go into the gender conversation because that's not what it's
Yes.
about. It's about
Right.
the energy that we have within us, but then the misconceptions that we have placed on us since early life that we live with, or conditioning that we've been accustomed to, or the way that we think it is appropriate or the right way, I guess, for better term,
Yes.
of being a man or a woman with the masculine and feminine archetypes. Okay, so
Yes.
do you want to dive into it?
I would love that.
Go for it.
Yes, because it's so necessary. And again, like you mentioned, it is not gender related, it is energies. And
Mhm.
for example, I will use myself. I am very masculine in how I carry myself as a woman. And it's not to say I don't love to get pretty and, you know, take care of myself that way. It's more that I'm a doer. I like to do and act and move. And as a Taurus, again, it's a go, 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 right? Whereas rest and digest comes a little bit harder for me.
Yeah.
Like as a meditator, I tend to meditate more in my body. So, for example, cleaning is my meditation, right? But again, these energies are so important. There has been a misbalance of the female for me. This stems back to my culture. Being of Iranian descent, in my culture, women are seen as weak within the culture. But we are actually, Iranian women are some of the strongest women you will meet. I mean, they are go getters,
Mhm.
but culturally, we've been suppressed. So
Yeah.
I grew up. Seeing, you know, women in my culture struggle for their place. You know, they had to be covered. They couldn't wear certain things. They couldn't say certain things. They had to, you know, again, it's the whole, you know, women shouldn't have a voice, right? You know, go do the housework. Don't worry about anything else. And so I think I suppressed that female energy in myself. But I saw it as, okay, it's weakness and I need to be like a man. So I'm not going to allow a man to control me. I'm going to, you know, be the person that has a career, so that I don't have to, for example, not be able to leave a relationship that's unhealthy because I can't afford it, or I live under my husband. And so this created that disbalance in my life. And now I found that in order to find that balance, I have had to learn how to rest and relax, right? Really come back into the yin, really come into the receiving, really drawing boundaries and not giving of myself as much, and filling in my own cup. So that's how I've learned how to balance my energies. But I also have found that I have attracted partners or male counterparts who have been more in their female energies. And really, all I mean by that is they're more in touch with, say, their emotions. They're more in touch with the rest and relax, right? They've allowed me to be more of the go getter, and they've been able to step back and maybe take less of a stance in the relationship with certain things. So that's just been my kind of experience with that.
Oh, I can definitely relate with the masculine energy, and I feel it's very fairly common with a lot of, I guess, maybe women in our age sort of demographic that have had to take care of themselves and work for themselves, like sort of, or maybe even breaking away from the traditional family archetype in a way of
Yes.
the father doing, being the breadwinner, the mother taking care of the children, and this wave of women wanting to move more into the workforce, and that is starting to, like how the pendulum swings, right? It usually
Yes.
goes from one extreme to the other. And yeah, even in the States, I saw some statistics not too long ago around women dominating certain areas in industries or workforce or schools and etc.
Yes.
But that's a different, well, I mean, it's sort of relatable, I guess, but it is around this it is an imbalance, and not everyone's different, and I'm not saying all the women who are out there being successful have imbalances, who I have no
Yes.
idea of their story, but it is quite common for women who are very driven and who want to provide. The masculine archetype is to provide, it is to hustle and to be very assertive and dominant energetically. And so on the feminine principles, I know for sure, and I was like that. I was very, very determined. I grew up in a house structure that was sort of the traditional way, but it was really, really, really unhealthy. And I
Yes.
swore to myself, I am not having a life like that. Mine is going to be different. But I
That's it.
like the pendulum swung, and it went
Mhm.
way to the opposite side, and I had massive imbalance to the point where, and this is actually where it disrupted my spiritual and psychic, I guess, or intuitive abilities, because that is
Mhm.
also connected with the feminine principles, is the connection with our heart, connection with, well, yeah, and even with heart, actually, that was huge. I was very, very, very closed in, very protective. And so when I started chipping away at my old persona, my ego, my limiting or false belief system
Mhm.
subconsciously, then that naturally started to come back, or start. I don't even know if it ever was here. At some point it was, but I don't remember it. But with that came my spiritual gifts started to heighten. My healing abilities have started to heighten.
Yes.
My sensitivities have started to heighten. My connection with my heart has gotten a lot better, and openness and being able to talk about things that before made me feel uncomfortable, and oh, I can't talk about that, and that's awkward, and that's weird, and like really shutting down genuine conversations. I couldn't have open
Yes.
conversations. It was really, really difficult. So there are all these little nuances. I mean, there are I feel the more impactful imbalances that we can have, and then the subtle ones that are really important around human connection and around our life experiences, and how we interpret life and how we feel about like all the details in our life, right? And if we have
Yes.
those imbalances, we will miss half of the details in our life. We will miss half of the gifts in our life. We will overlook our gifts and talents, or we won't even tune in with our gifts and talents. We'll will have disconnects with relationships. Our body will become imbalanced because we have our masculine and feminine, our right side, left side, areas of our body that become imbalanced, which I've had that as well.
Yes.
So yeah, it's really, yeah, it is fine tuning. It's not being alarmed by this. If those listening or watching, and you're feeling like, yeah, I actually, could feel that I have imbalances. It's just being aware is the big
Yes.
one, and then chipping away at the layers within, and just moving through, or doing release work, or seeing a specialist or someone to help you at least get rid of some of these areas that you can't see within yourself. Sorry, I have sun in my eyes. But yeah, it's really fascinating. And I always say too, look at the subtleties, because we often overlook we often overlook the subtleties. We look for the big impact, the big change, the big,
Mm-hmm.
because we also have that instant gratification society, but also if you've had traumas in your life, then you're used to the big shake-up stuff. Like it really
Yes.
affects how we I guess like what we expect out of life, or like sometimes if we've had a lot of trauma, we almost expect worst case scenario or something bad to happen or dramatic or traumatic. So it's really softening up these areas within ourselves so we can create greater knowing and sensation within us, like sensing and feeling on the subtle levels. And that is
That's
really
right.
where the most important aspects of our being is, because when you start reaching into the subtleties, then you go deeper. And
Exactly.
that's, yeah, it's really, really, that was hugely eye-opening for me, I found.
Yes, definitely. And remember, listeners, is your emotions are always guiding you. Your body's
Hmm.
always sending you signals. There's again, like you said, there's nothing to be alarmed. It's just like something I'd heard that I picked on for myself was use your emotions as a guiding system, as a GPS system. So say you're feeling quote unquote negative emotions like fear, for example, that's your body just going, hold up, hang on, you're living in a fight or flight system. This is not natural to me. We're meant to be in rest and relax and at peace. So if you are feeling fear, hey, what are your thoughts? Check in with the thoughts you're having. I guarantee you're probably worrying about something, or you have anxiety about something, or there's some sort of stress triggering those thoughts. So again, it's not a bad thing. We need to stop looking at it as good and bad,
Yeah.
or negative and positive, and just look at it as balance, because that flow, that beautiful surrender is in that balance. That's
Yeah.
where we're going to find being in our flow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where when you feel like, when you're getting all the synchronicities and all
Hmm.
of the coincidences that come and happen in your life, right? The
Hmm.
connections that are made in that flow.
Hmm. And you also find more things to be grateful for and to be at peace with. And just, yeah, like looking back, honestly, even a year ago, it just night and day difference in how more relaxed I am with life and
Yes.
just the process, and looking for, not looking, but feeling for the bigger information, I guess, like really tapping into other things that I never thought I would, playing with it, playing with different senses, and yeah, the synchronicities as well, messages, that you can really tap into. Let's go, before we wrap this up, let's go into dualities, because this one exists within us, but it also exists very, very heavily within our society.
Yes.
Dualities is ripping us apart at the
Mm-hmm.
seams, and it is driven by ego. And
Yes.
it is, we have polarization, which is really the the necessary dynamics within us and within our existence, within life, that we have and that just are, and we can learn to work with them together, like the light, the dark, the masculine, the feminine, the hot, the cold. But then we have dualities, which is, like separate ways of thinking, or two opinions or two perceptions that can coexist. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us, when it's imbalanced, or when it's really in the coming from the ego, wanting to prove, wanting, or even our old wounds, wanting to get back
Yes.
at someone who doesn't believe what we believe, or wanting to fight with them about it, and that's where this is a really strong aspect of what we're facing. And I'm sure those listening and watching can see, or have even experienced it themselves. So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, I think it's when you say that, it's that, okay, my way sounds right and your way sounds wrong, or my experience is right and your experience is wrong. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It's like when you have, for example, a book that's one color on one side and it's another color on the other. And if you're holding that book in front of you and you have another person on one side, you're going to say, well,
Mhm.
what color do you see? And they're going to say, well, blue, for example. And that's their side. It's blue. And we're holding that same book. And I'm going to say, well, no, it's red. And they're going to say, no, it's blue. And we're going to have this argument about, well, I'm saying it's red, you're saying it's blue, when both of us are correct.
Yeah.
We're both right. We're just looking at the book from a different perspective. And so I think if we can understand that everyone's going to come from their level of understanding, and just try to meet them at that level, then we will have less conflict. And perhaps in their world, that is their truth, right? And we don't see it because that we didn't live their life, right?
Exactly.
Like some, if we were to, explain our lives to someone, a non-immigrant, they would probably be in shock at some of the things that we faced. Right. And so these are the things that's just trying to understand where people are coming from. What were their experiences? Where are they culturally? Where are they in their healing journey, really?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's pausing and just and understanding where they're coming from and honoring a different perspective and not being so headstrong and so dead set on me being right, you are wrong. There's no such thing as right and wrong.
Yes.
It's the same thing as like there's no such thing as
Exactly.
good or bad. They both exist as one. They're just
That's
different
right.
frequencies, they're different experiences. And yeah, when you have two people coming from completely different, even cultural differences or um different perceptions or different realities or belief systems, then there's that they just are.
Yes, it
So
is.
it's amazing how powerful that is. And it takes a lot of strength and observation to get out of the ego and let go of the
Mhm.
need to be right and the need
That's
to
right.
say that this is the way that it's meant to be, or this is the way that it is, supposed to be or whatnot. But we can only hope.
We can. And
Sometimes it takes, like something big in order to change mm, mentality or perception or mindset, like sometimes
yes.
it takes a big shift. Like you and I have gone through the big smacks up the head a little bit to
Mhm.
like wake up, look at
Yes.
things differently. This
Yeah.
is working.
Yeah.
So sometimes unfortunately we have to go through those moments in order to have that shift.
Yes. And let people be,
Yeah.
just let them be. You don't need to change their
Yep.
perspective. You
Exactly.
need to just change your own so that you can be at peace with what you're living at and what you're allowing.
Mhm.
But, that's one of, even as a practitioner, I had the save the world mentality. I wanted
Yeah.
to save everyone. And I'm like, they don't want to be saved.
Mhm.
Let them be at where they are. And when they're ready, you plant the seed if you have to. But when they're in a place where they're ready to hear that message, they're going to come to you.
Yeah.
But, and yeah, just meet people at where they are and share your opinion, but leave it at that and walk away, because we spend so much of our energy, so much of this disbalance is in proving that one side and not understanding the others, right? And coming to that understanding of let's see both. Why can't we just see both? Why can't both coexist simultaneously with next to one another, right?
Mhm. Mhm. One day we will hope for that day to come.
It will. I see it. I
we
see
we
it.
we hope
Peace
we
is
hope.
upon us.
All right. Thank you so much, Nazly. It was
Thank
wonderful to
you.
speak with you. I can't believe
Always.
how, time flies talking about this stuff
Yes.
because like I said, we can chat about many conversations such as this, which we'll
Yes.
definitely circle back and have another one at some sooner than later date. But again,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'll leave a link to your website as well on YouTube in the description box, on the podcast in
Thank
the
you.
description box as well. And reach out to Nazly anytime. And it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
Every time. Thank you so much as well. And thank you, listeners, for having me here.